The title of this talk is Political Memory Anchors, Using Branding Tools to Change Noise to Influence. So I'll be talking about memory anchors, and what they are strategic taglines, signature stories, visual symbols, or branded programs that reside in long-term memory. These are four tools that we use in branding all the time. And they have three roles to play. One is to position a candidate or issue. The second is to frame the discussion. And the third is to activate anchor associations. Now, my personal view is that, as I said, there's a lot of things that determine who wins an election, but I think memory anchors are capable of being game changers. They're capable of influencing. And I think that in the political space, they're underestimated, they're underused, and they're undermanaged. So I hope to change that. But before we get into memory anchors, I want to talk about the voters as an audience, how unreceptive they are, and what the structure is of their long-term memory. So voters are, in fact, disinterested as a whole. When they do, something does catch their eye, they're skeptical. They lack trust. They're, of course, incredibly polarized to the point that some parts of them are incapable of processing information. And they see information overload because there's dozens of issues. As a result, their experience is viewing information as confusing, irrelevant, annoying, and really just plain noise. And their response is active avoidance, forgetting, counter-arguing, and distorting. It's a tough audience. And that's especially true if you're trying to run ads. Another perspective, they have a long-term memory that can be conceptualized something like this. There's a whole bunch of nodes in there. Some of them are memory anchors. And most of the memory anchors are associated, have some associations, some things that you think of when you think of the anchor. All these nodes have some connection. Sometimes it's strong, sometimes it's weak, sometimes it's non-existent, but that is an important element of them. There's three things you need to know about this view of memory. First of all, there's a drive for consistency. People don't like discordant things in their mind. They like them all to be consistent. So there's a terrific drive to do that, and they'll go to uh, great lengths to make that happen. Again, they'll distort, they'll forget, they'll ignore, they'll do anything they can to keep it consistent. Second, there's spreading out activation, which means if one of these nodes is activated, because of its links to others, others will be activated, and the probability will depend on those links. Finally, that we have what's called fast decision making that's driven by this network. Danny Kahneman wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which provides a really good explanation of fast decision making. It's just for most things. Do I process information? Do I accept information or distort it? Do I vote this way? Do I have this feeling? Is usually made in a split second. There's no analysis. There's no research. It's just, there's no thinking. You just make the decision. That's fast decision making. And so when you realize that, then it's kind of an illusion to think that you can, by logic and facts, change people's mind. Well, we have a tough environment to communicate. And so what are the response strategies? Let me just give you two observations that I have. First of all, Democrats are weak communicators. James Carville and Paul Bogelli said, Americans don't like what Republicans stand for, but they don't know what Democrats stand for. Israel Klein said, Democrats have a real problem telling a simple story. Barack Obama said recently, Democrats can be a buzzkill with their abstract campaign messaging. I could create 20 other quotes like this, or 50, and and it's hard to find one that would take the opposite tack. Well, why is this? My hypothesis is that first of all, Democrats, for some reason, have this rational voter model. They believe if you bring facts and logic to the table, then people will be persuaded. It doesn't work that way. Remember the fast decision model. It just doesn't work that way. Uh, and and second, if they often fail to support even a winning position. I think they have a attention span problem because they see these other issues that are really interesting to analyze and explore and communicate. So they get diverted, or maybe they simply lack the confidence that their position may not be perfect, but it's okay, let's go with it. Third, they're uncomfortable, I think, with edgy emotional connections. I think they're afraid of alienating. They're afraid to go to market with something that's not perfect. Um, and uh, uh, anyway, all these three things, I think, are partial explanations of why we see Democrats not doing so well. The second observation I make is a lot of a lot of political communication in general, not just Democrats, is winning the day. That's the name of the game. You create the energy or you leverage the energy of hot news. So if something's hot, you go on TV and you give your opinion and you get voters in a place where they're more receptive also. Unlike ads, they're more receptive when you're giving an opinion of hot news. And so winning the day is really, really important part of any campaign strategy. But that doesn't mean you can't also do some building memory anchor assets. Assets that will build, reinforce, and expand. Assets that will not be forgotten, but they'll be activable. I'm reminded about our chronic problem in marketing. We have what's called demand marketing, which is programs that build sales right away. Like you could run ads for Dove skin products, for example, tell them why it's a good thing to buy tomorrow, versus brand marketing, where you're building brand assets that will support strategies of the future. Like Dove's Radical Real Beauty campaign is the example of brand marketing. But what we've learned in marketing is that you have to have both, but they have to work in partnership. They can't work in isolation or in competing. And so we've learned, for example, that demand marketing is more effective when it has a brand marketing component to it. It's more effective. And if it doesn't, in fact, it's often very ineffective. And we also learned that brand marketing, when it's really effective, will also help build sales right away, demand. So the lesson from our experience in branding is that, leveraging the day, communication can also build and leverage memory anchor assets. So to the extent that there's a memory asset, they can use this to clarify it and position and motivate what they're saying. And if it doesn't, they have the opportunity to build one that will have lasting value. Okay, so we turn now to memory anchors. Strategic taglines, signature stories, visual symbols, and branded programs that reside in long-term memory. So what I want to do is to convince you that these are really powerful. They really can make a difference. They're not as powerful getting a great candidate. They're not as powerful as maybe picking the right issue, but they are really potentially powerful. Um, so, so by strategic Taglines can be just a phrase, war on poverty. It can be a sentence. Let's make America great again, which was originally used by Reagan and more recently by Trump. It can be a word like woke or dictatorship. It can be a signature story. Bill Clinton introduced his campaign with a beautiful story about how he uh, was able to enjoy and fulfill the American dream coming from a small town called Hope. Can you imagine the luck of that coming from Hope? So restore hope to the American dream was the story. And a visual symbol, Bush had John Kerry changed his mind on supporting the Iraq War. And so Bush accused him of flip-flopping, and he used as a visual symbol the picture of Kerry using the windsurfer going with and then going with the wind. And so that became a metaphor for flip-flopping. And and then you have a program like the New Deal, and the New Deal has appeared several times in the last century. Um, but um, it can do a lot. So again, this stuff is really powerful. It just is. And in um, in branding, we've seen it again and again. The ultimate driving machine has positioned BMW and framed the discussion for a lot of their users for half a century. Aflac Duck is a visual symbol that has changed the image of an insurance company to something that's a lot more approachable and fun to be with. This big hammer is sort of represented for which is now the largest appliance manufacturer in the world. The fact that they're sort of based on quality. And it was an incident where way back when the CEO brought all the defective appliances and destroyed them with a sledgehammer. Dove, Real Beauty campaign. This is a branded campaign that's turned a $2.6 billion business into a $6.5 billion business because it gave it so much energy, visibility, and likability. Well, let's look at the political space. The power of a tagline. Let me tell you a story. In 2025, the Wisconsin Supreme Court election was being held. It was a critical election because it was going to influence the balance of the court. On February 27th, 5 weeks about before the election, Elon Musk funded a campaign which grew to over $20 million to support one of the candidates, Shamil. And a week later, the Wisconsin Democratic Party launched a program all around a tagline: "Don't let Musk buy the election," with a companion tagline: "People versus Musk." And they had events, um, they ran ads, they had people out there talking about it, they had signage, and when the election came, a sort of a 50-50 election went 57-47. And it was because of this tagline. Tagline was pivotal. The power of stories. One of the most amazing sort of impact of stories case is tobacco, cigarette. In 1965, 42% of the people smoked. In 2022, it was under 12%. This is an addiction. I mean, that is just amazing. And it really was done in large part because of stories. Like here's a story of Terry Hall who's living with the aftermath of a smoking illness. She can't talk. She can't live a normal lifestyle. She said on this thing, please record your voice for loved ones while you still can. And it was several stories like that that made a difference. The My Lai massacre story in 1968 changed the opinion of the Vietnam War for many. I wrote a book called Creating Signature Stories, where I elaborate on the power of stories and how you can develop great stories. So I recommend the book. Then the power of a visual symbol. In 1970, 2 years after the My Lai stories, there was a, a demonstration on college campuses, and there was a student protest that actually 4 people were killed. And here's the anguish, wailing of a person at that event who was kneeling beside one of the killed protesters. That visual symbol is inoculated into the brain of everybody that was around at that time. Everybody remembers that symbol. You just have to flash that picture on the screen, and everything that lies behind it will come to mind. The power of a branded program. WPA for FDR, the Interstate Highway Patrol for Ike, the Civil Rights Act for LBJ, the Economic Recovery Tax Act for Reagan, the Affordable Care Act for Obama. All those things are worded in such a way that they elevate themselves to a memory anchor. And they all kind of have contain in that thing uh, a relevant message. A branded program means that you understand the problems. You know what people are worried about. It gives you credibility. You've got a solution. It's just not saying we want to have more affordable lifestyle or something. And it's ownable, and it shows your passion for what you want to do. So that's Um, let me just say another story about a branded program. George Bush campaign, who incidentally is one of the great memory anchors of our time. It came out with compassionate conservatism, which made conservatism more palatable for some of the independents. He was a uniter, not a divider. Results, not rhetoric. Faith-based initiatives. And No Child Left Behind. So this was a branded program that represented his passion. And he had a clear idea how to improve education. You create measurement that will motivate people to improve, is a brief summary. But No Child Left Behind, he understood the problems. And education is one of the things people are concerned about. He it gave him credibility. He had a solution. And they may not know what No Child Left Behind, but they knew that was a branded program. And it's ownable. I mean, nobody else was talking about education. He had the floor to himself. And how fun is that? One more thing about anchors I need to introduce, and that is the distinction between umbrella memory anchors, which define the candidate. Things like the authenticity of Biden, Scranton versus Park Avenue, likability, I like Ike, change, yes, we can, Obama, which is a great um, tagline. And actually, if you look through umbrella taglines, there's a whole family of them around change. Everybody tries to say change in one way or another. But there's also issue memory taglines. That's surrounding with some issue and not just the general candidate. So they can be punchier, more on target. They can add energy, credibility, substance. But the major role is to communicate the candidate. The major role is to say, if you see how he's treating this issue, you probably understand how he's treating other issues as well. And you understand something about him or her. So Reagan, is for foreign policy, had peace through strength. Peace through strength. Boy, you know exactly what that means. It and it's so positive and it's so doable. It's so logical and it's so unique. Nobody has really voiced that since Teddy Roosevelt, speak softly and carry a big stick. Um, and are you better off than 4 years ago? Now, this is his take on the economy. So he's framing that as a discussion of how you've done in the previous administration. Not too good. And so that's how he wants people to look at it. That's how he's framing that issue. Let's take a example from Donald Trump, who's one of the great memory anchors of all time. He came out with the Magna, Make America Great Again. And of course, that was first Reagan's. And this demonstrated, if nothing else does, that you don't have to be original. All you have to do is own it for yourself. But it was supported by American First, Take Back Our Country, Drain the Swamp, Stop the Steal, Fake News, Drill, Drill, Drill. And Magna actually became a community, a movement. And it had the red hat and had events and so on. In branding, the ultimate success of a brand is when you form a brand community where people are so loyal that they're actively involved in brand and promoting it to others. However, he also had really won the election on two issues that incidentally logically should not have been primary issues. Immigration is probably a second order issue, and woke is probably a third order issue. But in the election he won, they were primary issues. So in 2016, he had build the wall. We don't have borders. Illegal criminals. The worst are dumped. And in 24, he repositioned a little bit, called it Biden's border crises. And he used the word invasions. So you can see the mental image of people coming across. And an open border is they have no barriers. Mass deportation is a solution. And poisoning the blood of our country is the indication that we're going to integrate into our society these undesirable people. And then woke, stop the woke agenda, you cancel culture, woke insanity, woke is weak, political correctness gone mad, men are men, women are women, anti-white racism, and that really is something that he owned and something that had a lot of influence. And we'll talk about this again, but it's really important to differentiate yourself. And many issues, it's hard to do that. The woke issue was not one of them. He's clearly differentiated. So now let me turn to the memory anchor roles. The first one is to position a candidate or issue. Position is key in politics, as it is in branding. Who are you? What are your values? What makes you special? What memory anchors highlight your story? Where do you stand on issues? But memory anchors can't just be memory. It's not check off the box thing. They have to wow. They have to be able to break through, get processed, get remembered, positioned. And to do that, you kind of look for five different attributes. One of them is to have an emotional response. And another story. Probably the most effective political ad in American history was done by LBJ, and its tagline was, curiously enough, not anything that LBJ said, but it was something his competitor Barry Goldwater said in when he accepted his nomination. Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. He said that kind of defensively because people were accusing him of being extreme. Well, so LBJ picked up on that and ran an ad that first showed a adorable little girl picking petals off a daisy. One, two, three, four, five, seven, six, eight. And that numbering turned to a countdown in the middle of the ad. Nine, eight, seven, six. And the conclusion was an explosion of an atomic bomb. So the visual symbol was this adorable girl. The story was a countdown story, and this tagline was the statement of the competitors: extremism and defense of liberty is no vice. And it was said to have gotten over 100 million views. This was 1964. There was no social media then. It has to resonate. And the uh, I need to tell you the Willie Horton story. In 1988, George Bush was running against Michael Dukakis, and not Bush, but Bush packed ran an ad about Willie Horton, and the signature story was simple: ABC, convicted for murder, received a weekend pass, and had a vicious attack on a young couple. That was the story, and it made people angry that anybody would let a prisoner out on a weekend pass. The tag was Dukakis soft on crime, and the symbol was Willie Horton. And Bush ran after that his own campaign, ran a campaign taking a major theme, and that is with a symbol of revolving door person policy. So prisoners go in, but there's a revolving door, they immediately go out. And the tag on both was Dukakis soft on time, on crime. This was all precipitated because while Dukakis was governor, the legislature passed a law allowing weekend passes to improve morale and behavior of prisoners. And Dukakis signed the law. He didn't promote it, he didn't advocate for it, but he did sign the law. Now, many were angry over the racist implications of because Willie Horton was a black, but the results was just amazing. Um, the tough on crime, Bush went from 23% to 61%, July to October. 23% to 61%. I mean, you can imagine he was getting killed on crime, and now that's his issue. And being not tough enough, Dukakis went from 36% to 49%. I mean, that's a game changer. It was really amazing. The third element is it needs to differentiate. This is a great story. 1932, FDR was running against Herbert Hoover. 1932 was 3 years after the Depression started. Talk about it's the economy, stupid. Unemployment was 24% versus 3% in 1929 when Hoover was first elected. 24%. And all the other numbers were similar. Hundreds of thousands of homeless. They were living in Hoovervilles. Because they were riding the train. This is a lot of them. And Hoover was responsible for the Depression. I mean, we certainly know that for sure now, but everybody was pretty sure then too. So that had to be the key issue, right? Well, exit interviews revealed that more voters or a substantial number of the voters were instead really convinced by the prohibition issue. Hoover advocated retention of prohibition, FDR said, "This is nonsense. We got to repeal it." And the great bulk of the voters were wanted to get rid of prohibition. They thought it was really stupid. And and the thing is that the economy was a little fuzzy. You didn't know exactly what programs the FDR had in mind. In fact, he was experimenting and so on, and you didn't know if the ones that he did announce were going to work or not. And so it was a little fuzzy, but there was nothing fuzzy about prohibition, sharply different. So you want to differentiate. Here's another example. Um, Senator Bennett is running for governor now, and he's for affordable housing for uh, for every family, and and as is everybody. I mean, practically everybody running for governor in every place is for affordable housing. But if you look at Bennett's website, two things jump out at you. One is one application, one process. The other is breaking ground in 1 year. So you see, he's thought this through. He has some original ideas. He has a plan, and everybody says that the regulations are a problem, but he's going to do something about it with a well-defined goal. And so to have instead of just saying affordable housing, one application, one process, if you say that in addition, then you have some differentiation. The fourth thing that we look for is authentic and credible. If you look at the website for Nancy Patola, not Mary Patola, sorry, uh, it reeks with authenticity. Her taglines are fish, family, and freedom, but Alaska first. No one from the lower 38 is coming to save us. Um, it's just really that's an inspiring line. Fix the rig system in DC that raises anger and resentment. And then she's got stories. She's got the fish camp stories, childhood for her and her 7 kids. How you put up fish for the family, that's what Alaskans do. And she came home from Washington as a congressman to do that. And the story of the decline of fish stock and the role of corporate trawlers. So she's got some really stories that are memorable. And then she's got symbols of Alaska, the dogs and her catching fish. It's and then if you look at Gretchen Whitner, fix the damn roads. And first of all, it's humorous. Second of all, it's got energy. And but third of all, it reflects the fact that she's interested in your day-to-day problems, and she's gonna damn well fix them. And if you can fix the roads, then you know that she can isolate other issues and also fix them. And finally, the fifth thing, it should be memorable. You want to have a memory anchor that attracts attention like a magnet. And and uh, And that's the bottom line. Now, there's some suggestions that have come out of research. If it's short, yes, we can. That's better. If there's a name in there like Ford, he's not a Lincoln. That's helpful. If there's a story behind it, they're going to take your guns. That's helpful. It's a visual like flip-flopper. That's helpful. Okay, so let's turn to the second rule, which is to frame the discussion. Framing is real. $3,000 is valued more when it's framed as a loss rather than a gain. That was one of the findings that got a Nobel Prize, and uh, and 75% lean is preferred over 25% fat. It's preferred a lot. So framing works by influencing the relevance of words, arguments and facts, feelings, stories, and symbols. Let me give you an example. Suppose we're talking about socialized medicine. So relevant words are things like communism, incompetent. The relevant arguments are things like the government is inefficient. The relevant feelings is the fear of a socialist path. Symbols and stories is you can't get access because of bureaucracy. However, if you're Medicare for all, the words would be universal coverage, efficient, feeling secure. Um, the argument would be millions are uninsured. The feelings would be sad for those who can't afford health care. And symbols would be Medicare effectiveness in the elderly. Um, and if it's framed as Medicare for all, these words, arguments, feelings, and symbols that are on the left side would not be relevant. Just words matter. Climate change means that, there's these awful storms, there's this drought and lack of water crisis, and there's these storms that are you know, these really unusually large, damaging storms. Got to do something about that. And and the science is there. We can do. We know what caused climate change. Versus global warming. Global warming is more, it's been this changed over tens of or centuries or millenniums. It's always going up and down, and we have to study it, and we have to make sure we don't spend money on on solutions that won't work. So it matters. It matters if you talk about right to abortion or right to decide. Who's going to advocate for abortion? Who's going to advocate for taking choice away from women? Once you got it framed, it's the party's over. The George Lakoff wrote a famous book and that brings framing to the political scene, and he basically said, ultimately, winning the frame wins the game. Winning the frame wins the game. And furthermore, playing defense is a losing strategy. It only reinforces the framing of the opponent. So if you're trying to argue that abortion in some circumstances is a good option, you've lost because if we're talking abortion, they've won. That's that's the way it goes. Now, one of the things about framing that we have to understand is when and how to reframe an argument. Let me give you an example. One of the most effective ads, according to a largest Democrat PAC, the most seen ad in the 2024 campaign, and also the most effective ad, an ad that changed the vote by 2.7% in tests, was one that said Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners. Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes and the ad included uh, this picture of a trans and it was really powerful. Now, when you get attacked, there's three options. You can argue against attack, and then you run into this, you're just supporting their framing of the conversation. You can ignore the attack, you can and try to change the conversation, and that's the preferred route if it's not going to make many waves, if it's not having much of an impact. But a big option is to reframe the argument. Now you take this Kamala ad. Um, the truth is that the Constitution says that you need to treat people okay, even prisoners, and the courts have interpreted that to mean that the prisoner should have access to medically necessary care. And the fact is that Kamala opposed sex change operations as being medically necessary. Her office opposed it. So the new frame should be, what is necessary care? And do we need laws needed to define necessary? It's not whether Kamala supports sex change for prisoners. It's what is necessary care. Pete Buttigieg on trans in sports. This is his answer was reframing it too. He said rather than saying it's bad or good, it's complicated. You know, there's chess teams and there's tennis teams, and those in charge should decide. So if you're a tennis team, you want the people that are running the tennis league to decide, not some government in Washington. So the new frame is who decide if trends are excluded. Um, and, um, and let me just talk a bit about gun control. In 2012, at the Sandy Hook Elementary School, 20 first graders and 6 educators were killed in under 5 minutes. There was an uproar, and everybody was angry and so on, and they wanted to do something. The Democrats coalesced around common sense gun safety, and that reframes gun control. It avoids alienating and energizing opponents. It's very logical, very doable. I think that was a good decision, but it's so democratic. So it's let's use logic and facts to deal with this problem, and 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 let's forget about emotion. And that's a big mistake because emotion drives. So my take would be you need to add back emotion. You need to take some of these stories from Sandy Hook, like the Sandy Hook organization created some videos. One had a romantic dialogue that was interrupted by a shooter coming through the door, and they're looking back in fear. So you need to have a symbol and a story that's attached to common sense gun safety. And that's kind of where memory anchors come in. Because if you can just attach an image to it that will represent a story and represent the emotion behind it, then you're going to be far better off. Finally, activate anchor associations, the third role. Um, Ronald Reagan was one of the great memory anchor people. He said, let's make America great again. Peace through strength. Government is not the solution. Government is the solution. And he came on is when he was running for re-election, he came out with a Morning in America ad that was one of the very best reactivation ads that we have. And the association clues that came out of it, being feeling optimistic, energized, proud to be an American, anticipate the new day. He had a fishing boat going out to fish. He had a tractor going out to the fields. He had people getting married. So it was a new start. Fishing boat, tractor, and wedding. And he sprinkled in some facts. People are now buying homes now. The inflation is down, but it's packaged in this larger story. And he talked about being prouder, stronger, better. Prouder, stronger, better. So if you look at the cognitive thing, you see Ronald Reagan at the top, you see Morning in America, and attached to that is optimism, new start, prouder, stronger, better. You see government the problem, you see peace through strength, you see Carter's weaknesses and family values. And and so again, when one of these things get activated, like Ronald Reagan or Morning in America or government's the problem, then another a pattern of these will also get activated, and and so the goal of this cognitive network is to enhance the ease of activation by making strong links between these nodes and and create nodes that have a powerful impact. So if they are activated, they'll actually have an impact. So spreading activation is really important. It magnifies the impact of a memory anchor. It gives it the credibility, it gives it breadth, it gives it depth. Now, for spreading activation to really be impactful, memory anchors has to be not only relevant and influential, but also accessible. And they have to have strong links in the cognitive network um, to make it happen. So let me tell you a story and talk about accessibility and strong links in the context of the story. Um, the Progress Action Fund, which is a Democratic PAC, started in 2020 to start to run ads, and they used a distinct strategy in every ad. They ran around about 8 to 10 ads over the years. The strategy is to find an event or a quote or a pattern of advocacy, and then that comes from the opposing party, and then dramatize that with a emotion evoking story, heavy emotion in these stories. And the stories have the same plot. They show a victim experience, often with relatable companions. This victim is being denied something critical, and a Republican congressman is shown explaining why. It's always the same congressman spokesman, and you see a picture of it there. Well, let me give you a couple of examples. In Ohio, a 10-year-old was forced to travel to another state for abortion. At the same time, a campaign among some Republicans was underway to make it easier to add anti-abortion rules to the state constitution. So, with that as a background, the uh, uh, the PAC decided to take this to its logical conclusion and tell a story. And the story you opens with a terrified 12-year-old girl sitting in a hotel in a hospital room. The father is saying to the doctor, very angrily, "My 12-year-old was assaulted, needs an abortion, and you are not going to do anything." And the doctor said, "I don't want to get arrested." And the Republican congressman comes along and and explains, "I'm your Republican congressman. Now that we're in charge, no, we banned abortion, no exceptions." And another ad that both of these actually went viral. Another ad was based on the ICE tactics of the day, which was to use masked people that would take people off the streets. And there was documented evidence that some of these people were arrested and held even though they were citizens. And it also was stimulated by a Trump quote, "The homegrown are next," that appeared in April 2025. So we see in this ad a loving young couple uh, chatting about their date, and they're clearly in love and enjoying each other. And then all of a sudden, the woman is grabbed by some masked people and dragged away. And the boyfriend yells, "She was born here, a citizen." And the Republican congressman said, now that we're in charge, I don't care. She looks like one of them." And and so what we see here in 8 or 10 ads, the same visual symbol, and a congressman that's pictured as authoritarian, knows all, tramples on rights, is old, stiff, out of touch, insensitive to voter needs. And the tagline, "I'm your Republican congressman, now we're in charge," appears in each ad. So, so those things are the distinct face, the tagline that's repeated again and again and again. Uh, that makes this more accessible, and it links. some of the elements of the thing together. And then the stories really have high emotion. They're supposed to develop emotion. We know that that means that it's going to be more accessible in memory and and therefore be able to be active in the spreading activation. So we have 8 congressman stories. They all remind and enforce each other. It's not as if each one stands on its own. They stand on the past. It expands the scope. It builds links and enhances links, and it's just went viral. So in 1994, I mean 2024 should be, 500 million views were estimated to have been obtained with a very modest budget.
Well, we've just covered three strategic roles of memory anchors. I'd like to add a fourth. This is more of a tactical role. And the fact is that a memory anchor can facilitate voter information processing, which, as we've sort of discussed at the outset, is a problem. And it does that in two ways. One, it can provide a takeaway from the ad or the video or the speech. At the end of one of those things, a voter is not sitting there saying, "What was the takeaway? What should I remember?" It's just not. And in 2 days, it's just noise. So what you want to have is a memory anchor that will help him know what the takeaway was. And if you let's go back to the Republican congressman, there's a visual symbol and combined with a tagline, "I'm your congressman, Republican congressman, now that we're in charge." So that combination has a lot of associations with it. Authoritative, knows all, tramples on rights, old, stiff, out of touch, insensitive to voter needs. So those associations sort of get triggered when you have that visual symbol in the tagline. And so they don't have to figure them out for themselves. They don't ask themselves, what should I remember here? It's for them. And then there's this powerful story, signature story about ICE sort of mistreating American citizens. And there's a link in the ad in this case to the visual symbol and the tagline. So that link is also something that is there for the voter. He doesn't have to figure it out. The second way is to expand the use of the memory anchor to other vehicles. And it's a way to go beyond ads, speeches, and websites. And one way is signage. You can have pins on your lapel or total billboards that basically just talk about the memory anchor, "No child left behind," or "Yes, we can." And those memory anchors are so powerful, they have a message in and of themselves, in addition to having a lot of associations. So if you find a way to repeat them, you find a way to build them. And the nice thing about having a pin, there's no, you don't counter argue with a pin. I mean, it's not a vehicle for sort of engaging in being a skeptic. Or it could be events. I mean, you can have a Democratic town hall or Republican rally, and that would be fine. But you're leaving on the table an opportunity to enhance your memory anchor and its associations and sort of employ their associations in a different way. So when you have People versus Musk town hall, or you have the Magna rally, then you have a chance to sort of use that time and space you have with a voter more effectively.
Well, there we are. Let me talk about how you create memory anchors. Just 5 thoughts. And first is you need to develop a position. You need to think strategically. You need to know how you're going to position your candidate, how you're going to position the issues. And then That motivates your search for memory anchors. That moments it also helps you evaluate candidate memory anchors. Starts with a position, it starts with strategy. Second, be a thought leader, not a voter th follower. You know, it's fine to keep a tab on what voter sentiment is, but you want to control, you want to drive voter sentiment, you want to be a thought leader. I mean, just think how Donald Trump did with woke. I mean, that's not something that these voters thought of by themselves. He was a thought leader in that thing, a very successful one. Third, be opportunistic. What clicks in speeches and events? Keep your eye open, and what clicks, see if you can elevate that to a memory anchor. And Obama, yes, we can. That came out of a speech he gave in New Hampshire. Fourth, have substance behind the attack positions. Be ethical. You know, it's always a thin line, but you need to be ethical. Not only is it the right thing to do, but you want to gain trust. Trust is the most important thing in this audience that's very skeptical and polarized. Avoid misrepresenting, because for one thing, if you get caught at it, it's going to really, really destroy you. And avoid, you want to avoid giving the opponent an opportunity to turn offense into defense. And if you have substance behind your attack, it's going to be less uh, vulnerable to that. Finally, go for home runs. It's not a matter of just checking the box. We're going to have a memory anchor here. It's getting one that's emotional, that resonates, that differentiates, that's credible, and it represents you and it's memorable. Well, there we are. The fact is that we're engaged in very unreceptive audiences, disinterested, skeptical, polarized, overwhelmed. They think by instinct. They make decisions by instinct. They don't analyze very much, and they don't even think very much. They go by instinct, and it's driven by these cognitive networks. And so we have to influence those cognitive, and we got to influence memory, and we do that with memory anchors, strategic taglines, signature stories, visual symbols, branded programs that reside in long-term memory and serve to position a candidate or issue, frame the discussion, and activate anchor associations with spreading activations. And if we do that, we have a chance to impact our target audience. We give the communicators a uh, a way to help prioritize their messaging and create content.